If you opened a modern economics textbook, you'd get the impression that global finance was created by governments, shaped by laws, managed by central banks, and perfected by economists with tidy graphs and formulas. But that's the myth. The real story is older, stranger, and far more human. Long before institutions, regulations, or even the idea of a financial system, money flowed through hidden networks, private alliances, merchant diasporas, religious orders, guilds, family houses, and underground webs of trust that crossed borders centuries before nations could understand them. The world's first global financial system didn't run on law. It ran on relationships, on loyalty, and often in the shadows.
The seal is unbroken. The coin is all here, I trust. Weighed and true. Now leave.
To understand why these networks mattered, picture a world that feels prehistoric compared to ours. No central banks, no stock exchanges, no insurance, no stable currencies, a world where the value of your coins changed every time a desperate king shaved silver off the edges, where long-distance trade meant gambling with pirates, warlords, storms, plagues, and corruption, where moving money across a border required a level of trust no government could guarantee. This wasn't high risk, within like approachal, this was financial anarchy. And in that chaos, identity, not law, became the foundation of global commerce. If you belonged to a community with shared language, rituals, and obligations, your wealth could travel across continents. If you didn't, you were on your own. That's why the earliest global financial systems weren't built by nations. They were built by communities. One of the most remarkable was the Jewish merchant diaspora. From the medieval period onward, Jewish and later Sephardic and Ashkenazi traders formed a network that connected Christian and Muslim worlds. They spoke multiple languages, moved freely, and maintained family ties stretching from Europe to North Africa to the Middle East. When others saw borders, they saw opportunity. Kings couldn't talk to each other, but cousins could, sending letters in Hebrew, Arabic, Spanish, and Latin through generations of unbroken trust. Their loyalty created the world's first reliable international credit system, stronger than any local law. But they weren't alone. Across the Mediterranean, Venice and Genoa were building financial empires of their own. Their merchant houses invented maritime insurance, early joint ventures, and advanced credit partnerships. They gathered shipping intelligence, diplomatic reports, and market data weeks before rivals. Venice became a financial operating system powered by merchant trust, and Genoa funded Spain's empire through a network of bankers who traded risk like early hedge funds. Further north, another type of network dominated, less like a family, more like a corporation, the Hanseatic League, a federation of merchant cities that acted as one commercial superpower. They enforced monopolies with their own fleets, standardized contracts and currency weights, and operated like a multinational conglomerate centuries before corporations legally existed. The League proved that networks could outperform entire kingdoms. Further east, Armenian merchants of New Julfa quietly mastered long-distance trade from Amsterdam to Bengal, Isfahan to Manila. Their reliability, diplomacy, and multilingual communication made them indispensable to both Persian rulers and European traders. Their network succeeded where states routinely failed. Everywhere, the pattern repeats. Where states failed to provide trust, networks created it. And then came the most dramatic example, an order of warrior monks, the Knights Templar. Founded in 1119, they began as protectors of pilgrims, but soon discovered something more powerful than weapons: finance. They built fortified hubs across Europe and the Middle East. They accepted deposits, issued coded letters of credit, invented the medieval version of the wire transfer. Their secrecy made them wealthy. Their wealth made them dangerous. And in 1307, drowning in debt, King Philip IV of France destroyed them and seized everything. But their financial innovations survived, absorbed into the systems that followed. By the late Middle Ages, financial supremacy shifted to great banking families, the Bardi, Peruzzi, Medici, and later the Fuggers. They built branch networks across capitals, used coded communications to move money faster than royal messengers, invented modern accounting, and financed kings and popes. The Fuggers even funded the election of Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. They didn't need armies. Their power came from information speed and credit leverage. But financial power isn't only about money. It's about knowledge. And no group controlled global knowledge better than the Jesuit order. They mapped coastlines, documented trade, studied local economies, and advised monarchs. They weren't bankers, but they controlled the information merchants depended on becoming the most sophisticated knowledge network of their time. As Europe entered the Enlightenment, another secretive network rose: the Freemasons. Their lodges brought together merchants, bankers, scientists, and political elites. A Masonic handshake often meant more than any legal contract, providing a trusted environment for ideas, deals, and influence. But the final transformation came from one family whose system became more powerful than many states: the Rothschilds. They didn't invent international finance, they perfected it. Each brother was placed in a different European capital: London, Paris, Frankfurt, Vienna, Naples. Connected by coded letters, bonded couriers, and unbreakable trust, they built the fastest private communication network in Europe, faster than kings, faster than armies, sometimes faster than governments. In finance, information isn't just power, it's profit. And the Rothschilds mastered both. They funded states that hated each other, moved money across borders even during wars, stabilized currencies, financed railways, and built the arteries of the modern economy. Their network was the final, perfected version of a world run by private financial alliances. But as the 19th century progressed, governments began catching up. Central banks, stock exchanges, clearinghouses, and national bond markets appeared. Yet even as public institutions grew, private networks didn't vanish. They simply merged with the emerging financial architecture. Which brings us to today, a world that looks regulated, orderly, and governed by formal rules. We like to imagine central banks control money, governments control capital, and regulators control risk, but behind the polished surface, the old machinery still runs. Shadow banking mirrors the off-book practices of Venetian traders. Euro-dollar markets look like the cross-border webs of Sephardic merchants. Offshore banking resembles the secrecy of the Templars. Private equity circles resemble modern Masonic lodges. Global intelligence agencies resemble Jesuit information networks. And multinational corporations operate through alliances that echo medieval merchant leagues. The architecture changed. The function did not. In every modern financial crisis, 2008, the Eurozone collapse, the rise of offshore finance. It wasn't laws that decided outcomes. It was networks, private calls, elite negotiations, informal alliances between governments, banks, and investors. This isn't conspiracy. It's structure. Finance cannot function without trust, information, and coordination, and governments still struggle to provide these things at scale. When markets panic, when currencies fall, when states default, it's the networks that restore order. Always. That's the hidden truth. Every major public financial institution sits on top of a private network, and that's where the real power lives. The Templars didn't just invent letters of credit. The Jewish and Armenian diasporas didn't just trade. The Italians didn't just build banks. The Jesuits didn't just study. The Masons didn't just meet. The Hanseatic League didn't just regulate. The Rothschilds didn't just fund empires. Together, they built the nervous system of the modern global economy, a web of trust, leverage, communication, and influence that still moves faster than laws, faster than states, and often faster than markets themselves. So the real question is, are we living in a system of institutions, or institutions built on networks wearing masks? Because the more complex the world becomes, the more valuable trust becomes. And trust still flows through private networks, long before it reaches public systems. That's why, in every crisis, those inside the network survive, and those outside pay the price. It isn't fair, it isn't transparent, but it is reality. Global finance was born in the shadows, and centuries later, the shadows still run it. If this changed your perspective, hit subscribe. History has answers, and I'll show you where to find them.